Do you remember what your hands can do? Grab a needle and thread, and let's sew together. We're going to practice what I call a reverse backstitch, meaning that on the right side of the work is loops, and on the other side of the work are the stitches touching, like it would look as if you were doing a backstitch, kind of the correct way. To do this backstitch, if you are right-handed, you're going to work from left to right, and if you are left-handed, you're going to work right to left, which is different than the other backstitch, which you do right to left if you're right-handed and left to right if you're left-handed. I would recommend you drawing a line on your fabric because that's going to be a great way to follow along. And to begin, I'm going to take my needle and think about the width of that first stitch. And I want it to be about 8 stitches to the inch. And so I'm going to start a stitch width away from the edge. And I'm going to actually just dip my needle into the fabric here and come out this way. So what's happening is on the underside, you can see where the needle is. That's essentially what the first stitch is going to look like. And so that would look like the back stitch from the front. I can really show you right there. So that's what you're doing. And so to do the second stitch, we're going to put our needle a stitch width away from this knot, either to the right or to the left of it, depending on if you're right or left-handed. And then we're going to push this down, and we're going to then push it towards the knot to make the next stitch. And make sure you pull it snug enough that it really sets the stitch in. This is one that's easy to not have good tension, so you just want to pull it tight enough that it really connects with the fabric. And then once again, progressing forward with your needle, but then the needle is actually itself going backwards towards that last stitch, pushing it through. So you can go through the same hole of the last one, or it can be slightly overlapping or slightly gapping. This is also a stitch that people use in embroidery. It's similar to a stem stitch. But just like we've done with other stitching, back stitching, running stitches, we're keeping this needle parallel to our work, parallel to our bodies. I just want to remind you to keep your hands relaxed, your body straight, keep that work at navel height, and use your middle finger of your dominant hand to push that needle through the fabric. So we're going to hold it with our thumb and forefinger. We're going to move it, kind of get it to the place we want it to be, and that final push is happening with that middle finger. So you can see what it looks like on the underside there. Starting to get a little bit more consistent as I'm kind of getting a rhythm. Oftentimes your hands just kind of have to warm up. So this is a great stitch to use if you're doing a flat felled seam where you're sewing the seam first and then felling over the raw edges. This way, what's actually visible from the exterior is actually a little bit of a nicer, even stitch versus kind of the more messy loops. That being said, historically, I have seen both. I have seen examples of people using like the regular back stitch, quote unquote, to sew the first seam, and then they fill it over, and what's visible is actually these loops. I've also seen examples of where they've done sewing in this manner so that what's visible is actually this. This way will actually give you less thread on the fabric to then actually pull. And so in a way, using this technique I think is really effective because again, there's less loops to get caught on the interior of their sewing as you're wearing your clothes. Now to knot off this example, I'm going to just go back and do a stitch like I've always done. So I've finished a stitch. And then where that tail is, I'm going to take a little bit of a bite out of the thread, kind of go between the thread and the fabric, make a loop, put my needle through that loop twice, so that creates a knot, and then I'm going to take the needle and pass it between the thread and the fabric, going back through my work to then lay that knot into place. You can also just do a couple of stitches backwards in order to lock it in place, but this is how I make a knot and then hide the tail. And now I'm going to clip it off. So there's your reverse back stitch. The other side. Yeah, try it out and let me know what you think of it, or let me know what kind of seams you like to sew with this particular technique. Happy sewing!